Yeah, but like, how many bones did you break?
Well, I'm getting there.
And eventually their hazy beer turned clear. They said, send it back to us.
So like,
oh my God, how do you break a titanium rod?
That's a good question.
I was like, I've never smelled something more peanut butter in my life.
Yes, you do. You put the raspberry in the peanut butter porter, and you get a straight up PB&J.
Yeah. I cooked 15 pounds of bacon in my house. Almost burned my house down because
Yeah.
I fell asleep and it was in the oven. And I woke up and smoking.
Welcome to Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer, the podcast that will increase your enjoyment of craft beer, or maybe you call it local beer, and the people who make it. We have traveled to the north central neighborhood of Chicago to go from grain to glass with Brent Raska. He's the owner and brewer at Burning Bush Brewery, and his head brewer, Scott McElhenney. So they are both here. We are very excited to have them share the stories that make each brewer unique. I'm beer drinker and hellraiser Brian Noonan, and all my opinions are strictly my own, for good reason. Behind the cameras, our executive producer, Cody Goff, and with me, as always, is the high priestess of hops, the matriarch of malts, the femme fatale of fermentation, the siren of suds, the regent of remote podcasting. She's the co-founder of Exit Strategy Brewing Company, Catherine Vallow. Catherine, good to see you. Now, tonight, I believe we have one of the most unique origin stories that we have covered on Crafty Brewers.
I believe that you are right. In fact, I think this is going to be our holiest of all episodes. I'm like a little nervous that if I swear or say something bad that I will not be forgiven, but I'm also confident that we'll be just fine.
It's all good. I do own a bar, so it's all good.
Well, and that's also why, if you're watching this, it looks like flames are shooting out of my head. Is this foreshadowing for my afterlife? I don't know. But let's go on with the show because that really doesn't matter. So since we're already teasing the unique origin story, and I know since Burning Bush has opened in 2020, this has been a big focus. So your origin story is out there, Brent, but it's still something we got to talk. You came to brewing after a career that is not typically thought of with somebody who's pushing hooch to the masses.
Yeah. And by the way, I wish I have an intro like hers. That's quite the titles.
Isn't it so nice? Yeah. I really want to figure out ways to add more to it, but then I think we would just take up the entire podcast. But it really doesn't suck.
I did come up with a good one for Brent. He's the pastor brewer.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, pastor brewer. I like that.
So grew up in Spokane, Washington, went to Washington State University, then went to Princeton Theological Seminary. So I didn't grow up going to church, ironically. I didn't set foot in a church till I was 15. So actually now owning a brewery, so actually becoming a pastor was more surprising than owning a brewery. Okay. But it kind of all fits now. But anyway, I met my wife, who's also a pastor as well. Oh, wow. Right before seminary, and I started a year ahead of her, and we went to seminary together. And in 2000, after I graduated seminary in 2009, we worked for a church in New York City, Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church, and it was a 2-year program. We were in Zambia for a year teaching, and we got to travel.
Teaching Bible stuff?
Yeah, teaching
English?
It was,
kind of
training lay leaders in the church. It was curriculum developed by Zambian pastors. So it's not like, hey, this is how you do it. It's their own. We're extra facilitators, and we got to travel to Zambian pastors, and then we got to travel for 3 months to like 8 different countries in Southern Africa as well, just learning and traveling, and it's quite the experience. And so that ended in 2011, and so we were looking at churches across the country. So we ended up in Wilmette, where my wife is associate pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Wilmette. That's where we ended up meeting Scott and his family. We'll get to that later. But so, and then I was a solo pastor at a church in North Riverside, right by the Brookfield Zoo.
Big fan of North Riverside.
Yeah, called
Love
Christ
North
Presbyterian
Riverside.
Church. Yeah, called Christ Presbyterian Church. So I was a solo pastor there from 2013 to the end of 2017. And when I was doing it, before we had kids, and I was a part-time solo pastor, so I had a lot more time on my hands. That's when I started homebrewing, and it was a passion. I thought maybe I'll do something more with it. And Scott and his twin brother started from day one brewing with me, and they were out of college and younger, 20-somethings back in the day, paid them in beer and food, but it was just,
more than enough.
Enjoyed, and, but just hanging out and kind of did that together. And then, started working on a business plan and thought we'd do something more with it. Okay. At the end of 2017, sadly, the church, like a lot of small churches, was closing. Okay. And so I was like, well, what do I want to do when I grow up?
Exactly, yeah.
So I could continue to be a pastor in a different church, or that's when I was like, you know what? Same time to go for it, start my own brewery and working on a business plan. And so basically, So January of 2018 is when it started, business planning, and my wife, who's the true saint, we had a 2-year-old, and she was 8 months pregnant.
Oh my
with our
gosh!
second one.
All right.
And then I went from not having a job to like, I'm going to start this brewery. The first few months I was helpful with the kids and stuff, but it took 2 years, from January of 2018 to January of 2020 when we opened to, business planning, to get the loan, find the location, building permits, construction, look at all the stuff, right? So then we finally opened in January of 2020.
We'll get to that because that's the timing was perfect for that. But it had to be. Was it a hard? I'm guessing there was a lot of thought because being a pastor and being a brewer are very different. Except if you're Jesus and you're making water into wine, which we all know he did at the wedding in Cana. But so was there? What kind of struggle, or was there a struggle at all to make that decision?
Yeah, no. So it was a big. I gave you probably more background than you were looking for, but
no, I wasn't.
The build-up, though, right? So why? The question I get all the time: going from a brewer or going from a pastor to a brewer.
Yeah.
But to me, it combines all my passions.
Okay.
Fellowship, having a beer, at a bar, the community around with it. This room that we're sitting in is the community room, which is a free space, about 30 people that we don't charge folks or birthday parties. Church groups, anything under the sun.
Yeah.
So it's a community room. We give back to a lot of local nonprofits, like a lot of breweries do. And so our mission statement that we have on all our cans is high quality craft beer, generous hospitality, and serving the greater community. And so that's what we're all about. We're not pushing religion. It's for everybody. It's
because I was wondering, there's a big similarity between being a pastor and building a church community, and every brewer we talk to, it's all about community. So the similarities have to be a lot. There have to be many.
I was going to happen and say, I think the greatest thing about this is that when you really do, when you think about both vocations, and they are, like, you're building on community, and community is the most important thing. And we see that as a vein throughout the entire brewing community, right? Between our colleagues in the beer world and then like people that come into the tap room, you're building the sense of community well within your space. I think this is, as much as it sounds like, oh my gosh, this is so opposite, it actually is like very not opposite.
Right. Yeah. Right. And there is a long history of monks, making beers for centuries. But that communal aspect, and we get complimented all the time for our hospitality and generous welcoming folks, like you were mentioning, and, just being a place for community. That's what it's all about. And then actually, one last thing. Yes. I didn't also realize how much being a solo pastor, like running a church, would help me be running a brewery.
Well, because you have to work with a lot of different people, right?
Working with the different people, but also managing a budget, hiring, firing, just the leadership aspect of the big picture stuff. So it was like I was like running a church is like running a business. Yeah, and so I'm still learning. Actually, that did help a lot, to equip, with all those things that go into running a business. So
that's very nice. Okay, so Scott, you met Brent while you were both at the same church. Had you thought about brewing before you and your brother started home brewing? Who introduced who, I guess, to home brewing?
So Brent definitely had the idea. It's one of those things where a buddy of yours is like, hey, I think I might want to start home brewing. It's like, okay, you go for it, It's not an easy startup cost. It's not crazy, but he got all the equipment. He did all the research, and like he said, he just invited us over, and it's like, 20, low 20, mid 20 something. I'm like, what do you say? Free beer and free food? Whatever you need. I got you.
It sounds like a good deal,
right? Not to mention, I was about 4 blocks away from him at the time. Perfect. So it's like, if I can walk there, even better. It was definitely Brent. And then as it went on, like he said, they moved to Wilmette in 2011. That was the church that I had been going to since I was a kid, and so we met Aaron and Brent that way because they lived next door to the church, and Aaron was one of the pastors at the church, and she met my sister. We became friends because she stayed over for Christmas one winter, and ever since then it was like I said, it's like a friend asking you if you want to brew. It's like, I'd love to brew. And then 5 years down the road, he goes, and I also want to open a business. And you go, yeah, okay, you're going to open a business too?
Good luck, buddy.
Have fun with that. But honestly...
And somehow you're still here. All the skepticism, and yet you're still here.
Right. Well, he didn't let me come. No, I'm kidding. It took like we said, he opened in the pandemic. So I got to watch the whole process happening and unfolding. I've been in this building when there were no walls in it. So it was fun to see all that, fun to watch the business plan move forward, and just through different complications in my own life and my own jobs. I didn't start until November 2020, which I say was perfect because they
had already adjusted to the horror.
Yeah. I got to miss that first little bit, which was great for me.
Well, let's get back to that because as with a lot of people we've spoken to, timing with brewers is impeccable, especially when it comes to opening their breweries. And a lot of people were in the same unfortunate situation you were. You opened in March of 2020, 2 weeks before the governor decided to shut everything down. After 2 years of work and 2 years of prep, you finally opened. I don't know if you could even put into words what it's like on that Sunday, because it was a Sunday at 5 o'clock when the governor pulled the plug.
Yeah, like looking back on it, it was insane. And like friends and family, they like all felt really bad to just assume that we wouldn't make it, we'd close. But that never crossed my mind.
Okay.
I just took $1 million loan. This is my whole life. Like failure is not an option.
Right.
So we just clawed and scraped and did everything that we could. And,
what was the biggest pivot that you, obviously people can't come in, so what did you have to do?
So originally it was just growlers to go. That's all we could do. Then the patio, actually, you just saw it a little bit ago. Like that wasn't in the original business. Like we didn't have access to that space, but because the people that own that didn't make it through COVID, like, and the landlord's like, hey, use it. So we were able to sprawl out and have a large patio space. That was huge. But, it's my staff, just trial by fire, reinventing the wheel. Now we were a brand new business, and I didn't know what I was doing, but we're learning. But also with COVID, and so just reinventing the wheel and just doing everything we could every week, folding tables out there. And I delivered growlers like every couple weeks to like Wilmette and Skokie and Evanston just to make a buck, just to do anything.
Yeah, anything.
So I'd get these orders and I would drive all over delivering growlers. Like it's anything. So
this is all going on from March to November. And Scott, you still decide, this is the business I got to get into.
Yeah.
These guys are, to use Brent's words, they're clawing and scraping for survival. I got to join in with that. That's the one.
It was really, I was running out of money and I needed freebie. No. No, honestly, it had always been a plan. Like I said, Brent and I have known each other for a little while, so it was always something where I wanted to come on. I've been a server and a bartender in my past. After college, that's what I went into because the job market's great too. But I wanted to be able to bring some of that help here, and I kind of started off, and the plan was to bring it on slow, do a little bit of an apprenticeship, and even at that point in time, I was later 20s, and it's like still trying to figure out my path in life.
Yeah.
And it took about 2 days, I would think, of working at Burning Bush before I was like, no, this will do it. This is great. I had seen, like I said, I'd seen the opening. I've been here a couple times since then. It's like, this is a cool place. It's a lot of fun to be here. It's a great atmosphere. Every other serving job I've had, there have been angry people. We get no angry people here. Everybody's so lovely. It's fantastic.
Because people like drinking beer.
Yeah.
And they want to come in and sit in a place that they feel welcome and drink beer. Before we take our break, because we got to talk about the beer. That's what we're here for. But I want to get to the significance of the name too, because there's a good story behind the name Burning Bush.
Yeah, it's been a long time on it, but to me, perfect. Burning Bush Brewery, you got Triple B, the alliteration.
I love that.
But to me, it's something I've always talked about as being a pastor. It's all about the story in Exodus 3 where the burning bush was on fire, and and God was speaking to Moses saying, "Go and free my people from Egypt." And he's like, "Okay, yeah, I'm just going to go and free your people." Okay, God. But Moses was faithful, and he followed, and God was faithful, and so that sense of community, and we're all this together, and I think it just speaks to everything. And it's also like, it's easy to remember. It's,
it is.
meet you at the bush. It 6 o'clock or whatever, so it all just has come together. Cool. Flames out of your head.
Flames out of my head is good.
I gotta tell you. So like my heart during owning everything has shrunk. So I feel like the Grinch where like my heart might be a couple sizes too small. That just made me swell up a little bit. Like I'll just everyone is just kind of found that was. I just have all warm and fuzzy inside, and it's not my beer.
And so part of why you guys are here too. It's like it's a unique story.
It's a very unique story.
So let's play up like my partner, and he's my partner with the event space. He like play up with it. Like so, the beer names like Red Sea, Lion's Den, Smooth Serpent, or follow that theme of of religious and
whatever marketing helps. Whatever kind
of how many breweries are around. What stands out? Like we have that story, so that we probably might not be here if it wasn't that story. I've been on,
if the beer wasn't good, which it is, and we're going to get to the beer because I got here early, so I've had the ability to sample many beers before we started the show tonight, which is great. And we have to touch on one beer that veered away from the biblical theme names, but I have to ask you, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, because I grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, and I know if some point after March, after you had worked so hard and you're a man of God and you're a pastor, did you ever just look at the heavens and go, "Come on, really?"
I mean, it was a lot. It's like And it's like, because it just kept going. We just thought, the pandemic, right? We all thought, it won't last that long. It's not going to be a big deal. But we're like, holy crap, no, this is a big deal. So, there was those moments for sure. You were asking earlier, like the leap, from being a pastor, not like, I give my wife all the credit in the world, but like talk about your business plan, but to actually have the confidence to take that jump to actually go for it was a huge deal. And like the fact that we did it and my wife was so supportive, like, that was hard, but like lots of conversations and to go for it. It's like, can't look back now. So,
well, we are at Burning Bush Brewery and I forgot to tell you, it's at 4014 North Rockwell Street in Chicago, burningbushbrewery.com. I should enunciate a little better. burningbushbrewery.com. Again, nice flight out there. I'm having a Kolsch right now, but we're going to take a break. And when we come back, it's dealer's choice. And Brent and Scott are going to pick a beer. We're going to tell you all about it. And we'll talk more about all the fantastic beers here at Burning Bush. All right, we are back with Brent Raska. He is the owner and brewer at Burning Bush Brewery, and Scott McElhenney is the brewer. They are here in the North Central neighborhood on Rockwell Street. Is that right? Yes, Rockwell.
4014 North,
4014 North Rockwell, burningbushbrewery.com. And we've talked about all the backstory, which is fascinating. Let's talk about the beer because the portfolio, you always have at least 12 of your own beers on tap, correct?
You were told that we don't always have, usually around there, 10 to 12, But I would say a little something for everybody. Full range from lagers to stouts to IPAs to seasonal.
But you guys are best known for your sours and your IPAs, right?
Best known for sours and IPAs. Which happen to be my two.
I was going to say, is that because that's what you like to like to drink and then you like to brew?
Although it's funny though, when I first opened the brewery, I wasn't into sours. I didn't like
really.
We had a couple guest sours. I'm like, actually, these are pretty good, and we started making them, and now I love them. Like Red Sea that Scott has over there, like that's like my favorite beer ever. Like it's a raspberry kettle sour.
Do you guys kettle sour?
Yes.
Yeah, kettle sour. Yeah, so
perfect.
And it's so they're more a little more fruit forward. Nice and balanced, and like a lot of people that aren't beer drinkers, are into them, but beer drinkers, so people love our sours. Got a good little following. Yeah.
Can you explain, because I see that a lot on different beer menus. What's the difference between just a sour and a kettle sour?
Yeah, that's a good question. So kettle sour it's more control. It's soured in the kettle, sits overnight, and you add lactobacillus and lower the pH to 3.3 to 3.6 in there. The wild sour is, different. It's more, I guess, less control and just kind of a very...
It's less control.
Yeah,
and working with Brettanomyces is like working with Brett Brettanomyces is just one of those things that can get so out of hand so quickly. It also can be very cool. So like if there's something with Brett in it that's just the wildest, funkiest thing out in the world, I want all of it. I want it all in my face. But it's such a hard souring agent to work with. And you also need dedicated equipment. Like you can't just bring Brett into your brewery because everything will be weird then. So kettle souring using lactobacillus, just it allows so much more control, and it isn't nearly as aggressive a souring agent as Brett, right? Because lacto is like what you find in Greek yogurt and sour cream and all that kind of stuff.
There are other breweries in Chicago that will open up the top of their fermenter and then open up the windows, and it's like, okay, so every beer is different, which is great. On the one hand, I love that, but sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of control, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like Jester King does that. They do that with open fermentation. You're like, woo.
So if I'm brewing, sour X, and I do it that way, this batch of sour X might be different from the next batch of sour X?
Yeah, because you're literally getting it from the outside. I always think it's funny that the Bavarian beer purity laws include 3 things. It's water, originally included 3 things. It's water, hops, and grains.
Okay.
They forgot the yeast because they didn't realize that they were using yeast, and that's why there was the magic barrel back in the day. It's like you had to use the right paddle to actually get the yeast, because that's how they're sharing it from batch to batch. They weren't actively putting that into beers back in the day. So it's funny that now people are still using the older traditions of getting yeast literally from the air, but we like to do a little bit, like I said, a little bit more controlled method for our beers.
That sounds good. So tell us about this sour that Scott is enjoying.
Yeah, raspberry kettle sour. So it is, fruit forward. You get the raspberry tartness, but it's not like overly sweet or overly slushy,
right.
Like some are. Which so it's a nice balance. We try. Can't say we achieve it and everything, but a balance. Like, hey, you see it has raspberry, you want to taste raspberry. You see it has spruce tips, you want to taste it, but you don't want it overpowering.
Right,
you don't want to be chewing a tree either, or just all raspberry. So we strive for that balance in all that we do. Yeah.
Very nice. All right, now the beer you're drinking is one of the ones we mentioned before the break that veered off from the biblical theme of some of the names of some of the beers. So, and you have a story. What is this beer that you're drinking?
So this is Tree Wrestler Spruce-Tip IPA. I'm from Spokane.
Spruce-Tip?
Yeah, spruce. Okay. So it actually has real spruce tips that we order from Montana. I'm originally from Spokane, Washington. And so kind of back to my roots. And so why it's called Tree Wrestler, and people ask me, like, where's that in the Bible? I'm like, it's not, but it's very personal. So there's lots of pine trees where I'm from in Washington. And so my buddies invented this thing called tree wrestling, where you climb the top of the tree and you swing it back and forth and you try to get the tip of the tree to touch the ground. So you bend it in half.
Oh my God.
Then you wrestled it and you won.
So like cow tipping, but with a tree?
But with a tree, basically. Okay. Yeah, it's really dumb. And we were dumb in high school. And so...
Yeah, but like, how many bones did you break?
Well, I'm getting there. 3. So I was 2 weeks before I graduated high school, the senior high school, way too old to be this dumb, but hey, teenage boy. I'm like, hey, if there's 3 of us, because normally it's like a small tree, 8-10 feet tall. If you fall or it breaks, not a big deal. But I'm like, since I'm a genius, aka dumbass, if we're 3 of us, we could take down a much larger tree. And so we're way up in this tree, like 20 feet up there. And that's why, like, on the can, I'm this guy that's swinging off, that like committed. Okay. And like I was like hanging, and the whole top snapped off. And my buddies were like, Raska, no, and like landed awkwardly on my left leg, compound fracture. Bone sticking out, broken tip fibula, tip fib, and 3 spots. And so thankfully the other guy like landed on his side, just had the wind knocked out of him. He was okay. The other guy landed on his 2 feet. He actually went on to be an MMA fighter. He was a state champion wrestler. He was fine.
Yeah. And, so for all you young MMA prospects, fight a tree first.
Yeah.
That's your lesson.
And so...
Nobody fight trees. Nobody go tree fighting.
Yeah, no, it's a stupid thing. But but thankfully we're next to this old logging road. My buddies tell the story, like they're throwing tree benches and rocks so the ambulance could get back on this old logging road and then put air cast on. That's when it really hurt. Anyway, so I had surgery the next day. Titanium rod from my knee to my ankle, and then I went to college. A couple months later, the doctor was like, "Yeah, you can start to like push off, lightly jog." And I pushed off one night, and I knew something was wrong. But I saw a doctor. I originally went to college in New York State, St. Lawrence University. So they're like, "We don't have your original X-rays. Everything looks fine." But I came back to Spokane over Christmas break, and my original doctor was like, "My leg was like crooked." He's like, "No, the titanium rod broke, and my leg was still broken." So like,
oh my God, how do you break a titanium rod?
That's a good question. So because all the weight like because the bone never completely healed, so all the weight was on the rod. And so where a screw went through, like the weakest point, is where the rod actually broke. And so then I had to have, another surgery, and they took that titanium rod out, and they put a bigger rod in and bone packing. And I took a semester off of college, and that's when I went to Washington State University to stay closer to home and get healed up. And so 2 surgeries, 2 titanium rods later, well, I got a cool beer name out of it. So
all right, I got to say,
okay,
I thought the pastor part of the story was going to be the unique part. You wrestled a tree, lost twice. That may be the better part of it. That's the more interesting thing. So, okay, now that
Wait, hang on one second. Before we move along from a broken bone, I would just like to assert that I recently got off of 6 weeks of having a broken metatarsal, and it is a very small break. And that 6 weeks was enough. Like, the fact that you said bone packing.
Yeah.
And like, no, absolutely not. This, oh my God. Like I can feel my foot hurting for your leg now.
Well, as I've grown, I usually wouldn't share this part of my story, but I'm more open. I'm the last guy that should have been in a tree. I was born with a club feet. Most people know what that is, but like most people, are born, their feet are straight like this. But for me, my toes were facing this way, literally like a U, like a club, face that way, very severe club feet. So I had surgery. I already had 6 surgeries on my leg because of that. 2 months, 3 months, 2nd grade, 4th grade, 10th grade. And so my dad, my mom were pissed because I'm the last guy that should have been in this tree. I was going to say, your parents had to be really happy with my legs are super skinny and small because of that, So, and I had open heart surgery when I was 3. So I've had 8 surgeries. And maybe that's why I'm successful at business because when COVID
you don't fear death.
COVID hit, it's like, whatever, get through this, So, wow. But yeah, last guy that should have been in the tree. And actually, we were in the hospital. One of my best friends, his mom was a nurse. He was yelling at my buddies, like, why'd you let him be in that tree? He should have been in the tree. And my buddy's like, have you met Raska? We're not going to stop him. So,
I'm proud to say no beers have been named after me in such a fashion. So
Scott, thank goodness. There has to be one level-headed human being at this table.
Although he's got a good story.
I got some idiots moments, yeah.
You've wrestled this tree. Then you decide you're going to... What goes into this beer that obviously must trigger a memory every time you open the can?
Yeah, and obviously, as you can imagine, I've told that story a couple of times.
And I'm guessing it's gotten longer over the years.
Well, yeah, I tweak it depending on how much time I have. I could tweak it, but so actually, what my original brewer when I first opened, because the bank required me to have a brewer with experience, and it wasn't a great fit. It didn't work out with him. With COVID hit, we moved on, and I became head brewer. But we went to GABF, Great American Beer Festival, before we opened, and we went to, what's the name of the brewery? They had an after party at GABF and had a Spruce-Tip IPA. And I was like, man, this is amazing. The first time I ever had one, I was like, we should try to make this. So that was kind of my inspiration. And plus then trees and, kind of the name and it all kind of fit. But I just love it. And then Spruce-Tip IPAs have been around a long time. It's
they really?
Yeah, they have. It's obviously it's a smaller niche, but it's a long tradition. We kind of it's basically like dry hopping with spruce tips. We put it in a bag and it's the actual, tips of the tree. And it gives that like a Christmas tree, like a spruce tree, like that piney, like that sprucey, flavor.
But it's also important to note that it's not a so a spruce tip edition does not make it a West Coast.
Right.
Those are different. Okay. So a spruce tip is going to give you that same pine tree and it's going to be really green and these smells, like we were talking about Christmas tree, whatever, but that doesn't make it a West Coast at all because it's 2 different processes that I think that's important because I opened this up and maybe it's a spruce tip. It's not a spruce tip if it doesn't say it somewhere on that label. And it's definitely one of the cooler ingredients that's come more into its own lately.
And if you're wondering what a spruce tip is, it's literally the tip of a tree. It's just the little end of the spruce trees.
The little nub.
Right at the end of the branch. You're actually putting the spruce needles and the tips of the branches in there.
We put it in a bag and then we were able to pull it out of the fermenter.
Directly in, obviously.
You're not just dunking a tree.
The tree was wrestled and then the tips were harvested.
First, so.
It was not a free-range tree. We wrestled it to the ground. So, Scott, is there a beer that's named after some traumatic event in your past?
No, I don't. I luckily don't have any of that. It's kind of funny. We have kind of a friendly internal competition to see who can name beers at the brewery. So I was drinking one earlier that's called Eden, and it's a strawberry basil a strawberry basil blonde ale. And actually, our newest employee just named that one, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, she got a name so quickly!" No, but I had one that I had thought of before Brent opened up, and we finally got a name for that one. I had Urban Monk as a beer that I named, and it's Belgian triple.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have what can only be described as hazy. But as you mentioned, you guys are known for your IPAs. So what am I drinking here?
Yeah, so Lion's Den Hazy IPA. It's our flagship, by far our biggest seller. Just nice. It's Mosaic, Idaho 7, and El Dorado.
You got it.
So you use a nice citrus. I mean, hazy's why they're so popular. Like, you get the citrus and you get the flavor from the hops without the bitterness.
Yes.
And, and
it's
some
really
people love it.
clean at the end, too.
Yeah.
You get everything up front, and then it goes away.
I
It's
like
not
this
hanging
one a
around.
lot. It's got all three of the hops varieties. Most hops are either citrusy, tropical, or stone fruit. This has got a little bit of each. Idaho's more the stone fruit. Mosaic's more the citrus, and El Dorado's more the tropical. So,
What makes an IPA hazy as opposed to, like, I tried the double
Promised Land.
the double Promised Land, which is a double dry hop, but it was not hazy.
Or like
and this is an
Tree
IPA.
Wrestler.
Yeah, look, I mean, just if we hold those up to the camera back there, look at the difference. These are both IPAs, but one, obviously mine very hazy, and yours is very clear. So what makes it hazy?
a hazy beer gets its haze from a lot of different parts. Most of it is all small little things that add to it, but the biggest one to me is the yeast that you use. Omega identified a hazy gene, and I was fortunate enough to go. Thank you, Brent. Actually, I should say he supported me, got me up to Madison to take a little seminar for it. But I had to go all the way to Madison to hear about Omega, who's a mile away from us.
See, and I only went to Rush Street to meet Hazy Gene, but that's another story for another time.
So they named it HCY1, and that's what makes a beer hazy. They told a story about a brewery that had been repitching their own hazy yeast, and eventually their hazy beer turned clear. They said, send it back to us, and we'll check in on this. And the hazy gene wasn't present. So that's a big part of it, is to get a yeast that produces haze and that can continue to bring that out. It's also hop additions. So you put in hop additions. A traditional IPA gets hop additions at the front end. The earlier you add hops, the more they break down. The more they break down, the more bitter they become. So if you're looking at a beer, I'm going to pick a popular one. Dogfish Head 90 Minute. That's a 90-minute boil. They're probably adding their hops earlier on in the 90 minutes. Most beers get boiled for about 60 minutes. And a lot of them will get additions at 60, 45, 30, 15, 10, 5. The later you get the additions, the closer it is to flame out, the less they break down, the more they contribute to
Haze.
haze and flavor and aroma. So
And addition just means, like it sounds, just putting them in.
That's when you
right?
add it.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just
adding
dump them in. Yeah.
Just dump them in.
So with when Lion's Den and hazies, it's all in flame out and double dry hop. It's not anything at the beginning.
They don't
most
get
IPAs.
anything during the boil. They get our hazies at least get no additions. And not only do we not put any additions in during the boil, and this is typical, we're not the only people who do this, but we'll bring it down. We'll do a hop stand around 170, 175 degrees so that it's even less breakdown of those. And then on top of that, to add to the haziness even more, you do dry hop additions during fermentation. So most of our IPAs get dry hop addition during fermentation, or at the very tail end of fermentation. Our hazies get 2, and it's usually around day 2, 3, or 4 is your first addition, and then around day 7 will be your second addition, depending on who it is and what you're trying to do with it. And then there's a couple other,
Or
like
if it's
I said,
a weekend or not, and we make it in.
right? Yeah. There's a couple other small things that go into it, like oats will promote haze. We don't add any filtration or finings
I was gonna say,
to promote haze.
That's a big thing that clear beer is adding clarifying agents and to try to clear. That's why these
really?
beers are
Okay.
more clear. With the hazies, you don't add that. This beer wouldn't be nearly as clear if we didn't add agents and things to clarify.
When we talk about hop additions, I also think it's really important for folks to understand that like you don't just throw a hop at beer. You do not do that. It is not meant to do that because hops are very delicate. They're super delicate. And the more the more science that comes up and the more that brewers know about how to handle these hops, when to put them into the specific beers and what kind of beer they're putting them in even, the more we can understand like why that beer tastes a certain way. So I like what you said about doing a hop stand on that one. That's incredible. And like the timing of hop additions and what that does. The thing with hops too is that so many of them now, and there are so many varieties, like the variety of hops right now in the world are crazy. And every single one of them has a different characteristic. And if you use it the correct way, then you are instantly going to promote all of the goodness that hop has to give you, right? So like you can drink a bitter beer just to drink a bitter beer and that's fine. Or you can really drink something where you're appreciating what those hops do. I always reference Azaka when I talk about like, that's one of my favorite hops because you can open the bag up and just smells like mango hitting you in the face.
Yeah.
But if you don't, like, you've got to handle it correctly so you get mango, so you get that characteristic, right? So, like, just the conversation about how we treat ingredients, I think, is so important when it comes to the style of beer that we're brewing.
Well, and yeah, they've even broken down a lot of hops. Certain hops are better for bittering. Certain hops are better for flavor and aroma. Magnum is a really popular one for just bittering. It bothers me, honestly, it bothers me that hazy IPAs and IPAs are both called IPAs because people will come up to the bar and they'll say, oh, what do you have that's not bitter? And I'm like, here's a hazy IPA. They're like, no, I said not bitter. And I'm like, yeah, this is not bitter. It's not that close.
This is not at all.
Yeah.
This is
well. That's the thing. But then
really
that leads to a whole conversation about IBUs and being like, well, I can tell you the bitterness units if you'd like,
Right.
or you can just trust your bartender.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I mean, and some people put the IBUs on. We intentionally don't for that reason because there's so many variables like IBUs don't tell the full story, so that's why I leave it off.
I've seen beers that I wanted to try and the IBUs are really high and I'm like, oh, I know this is going to be, and then it's like, this is not bitter at all. What?
Right.
But we've talked about these three, but there's one more we want to touch on that our man Cody Goff is drinking that I tried at the bar. Tell us about this porter that tastes like I've got a Reese's peanut butter cup in my mouth. And made me just want to go crazy.
No,
Cody?
it doesn't just taste like it. When this hits your nose, so I literally felt like I was smelling, like I'd opened a jar of peanut butter and smelled it. Not like Jif or Skippy, but like the full natural ones, right? Where they just gnash up the nuts.
No shade at Jif or Skippy. You know, if you want to sponsor.
No, but he's talking about like Whole Foods peanut butter.
Peter Pan. No, you made this at home. Yeah.
I'm a choosy dad and I choose Jif, just FYI. But yeah, no, legit, it was, I was like, I've never smelled something more peanut butter in my life. Like, I feel like I should be like eating spoonfuls of jelly with it. Like,
well, that's funny you should say that.
I love it, but what do you pair it with?
What's it called first off? Don't tempt me. It's called St. Peter. It's a peanut butter porter.
It's one of his favorites, so I'll let you talk about it. Yeah.
So if you do want to have some jelly with that beer, like I said, we're good at sours. We have our own home mixed beers. If you know, you know. And,
do you put the raspberry and the peanut butter porter together?
Yes, you do. You put the raspberry in the peanut butter porter, and you get a straight up PB&J. Yeah. It's so good.
I'm in with that style, with a little sour that way.
Yeah, a little sour that way.
Sour that way, I'm in.
It's so good. But we've
upped the peanut butter over the time.
Right. Yeah. All of our beers, it's a process of getting to where we want to. And I got to, again, throw it out to Brent. Brent makes the recipes, and he has, I would say, perfectly high standards. We get to a beer level that we like, and it's like, wait, can we do a little bit more? And we finally find it and get that right spot, and we keep it there. And this one, I think we just made... we maybe made our last adjustment for it.
I was going to say, when do you know, both of you, when do you know that it's time to just back off and go, yeah, this is peanut butter perfection?
I will say when we get comments like that, you know, there you go. All right, because we can keep tweaking it, but it's like, you know what? At some point, you got to just
that's the hard part of the job is we got to taste every single one after we brew it. No, so this one has a whole bunch of peanut flour in it. And then just to give it an extra touch, we put some powdered peanut butter in it as well.
PB2.
Yeah. And
that's easy. That's good to use. I like that one too.
And it's sweeter. Like the powder is good, but it's not that sweet. So the PB2 gives a little more sweetness.
And then we play around with a couple other parts of it too. So doing additions during fermentation or during conditioning, or depending upon what it is, peanut butter in the boil would be a nightmare because we have a plate chiller heat exchanger, and if you know, you know. I don't want to clean that.
There's a lot of secrets here at Burning Bush. If you know, you know.
No,
it's like In and Out with the secret menu.
No,
what else can I do here?
No, I can't imagine the gloppy mess of peanut butter in a heat. I'm like imagining a heat exchanger and then just running peanut butter. Oh my God.
Yeah, but no, we put it in. We put it in during the conditioning this time around, just to boost the flavor a little bit more, and it came out pretty much exactly how we wanted it. It's not overly sweet, but it's definitely a sweeter beer. It's still got that porter quality to it. You get the peanut butter big and bold. Yeah. And I had somebody taste it the other day, and they're like, "Whoa, that's a lot." I'm like, "Yeah, you don't have to finish your taster glass." And then he had another sip. He's like, "It gets better every time." It's like, yeah.
No, it's really.
What's
good.
crazy to me is so I went to a brewery with my wife downstate about a month ago, and it felt like every beer they had, they just did too much. Like their coffee beer was just too much. Their, whatever beer was too much. This is a lot of peanut butter, but it doesn't feel like too much. And I don't quite know exactly why or how you did it. Maybe because it's a porter, maybe the style lends itself, but it's good.
And that's a tweak over time. But like with the spruce tip, like too much spruce or not enough, that we do keep tweaking. What I'm proud of. We do, work on it together. Let's get that balance. And one more beer I want to feature along that lines is our, I was drinking it earlier. It's called St. Basil.
Yeah.
So on the patio, we grew all these basil plants. I used to grow at my house and enlist my children to help. But now I have staff to help with. But 4 pounds of basil that we grew. So it's amber ale with basil. So kind of like the spruce tips. And I ended up, when I was homebrewing, I grew basil in my house, added it in.
Nice.
That same kind of thing. Like you want the basil there, but you don't want it to be just so much basil, and so that kind of balance. But that's it's a fun one.
I had one of those earlier, and it was just the right hint, because I love a good amber, and this had that little bit of basil where you get it, but it's not like, oh man, I'm just chewing on basil.
Right? Yeah.
Not to be tooting our own horn here, but that's kind of what that's kind of what we go for. To throw it back, we're nothing, and I'm not gonna. I don't know what brewery you were talking about earlier. Everybody has their own style. Some people want the big flavor, but we're going for a little bit more balanced. All of our beer we're trying to balance. We have pumpkin spice as well, seasonal. Yeah. We fold it. It's all right. It's better than Starbucks, though.
But the nose is great, but
it's not going to punch you in the face. You're not getting pied in the face, but you can definitely, it's there and you can taste it. It's not overwhelming.
Really, I am drinking that before I leave.
I had a taste of that too. I was here. Did I mention how early I was here? I was tasting everything. I did. And because Cody, we both like pumpkin beers. And I used to drink all kinds of pumpkin beers, and I haven't in a while because some went way over the top. Yeah. And it was like, And so I got yours. And I'm not saying this just because I'm sitting here, but there was that little bit of spice, the nice pumpkin balance, and I was like, I could drink a couple full beers of this.
And it's still a beer.
It was a beer. It tasted like beer that had a little pumpkin just dropping by to visit.
I had no idea, zero, that you were a pumpkin beer guy.
I wouldn't have pictured it.
I wouldn't say I'm a pumpkin beer guy, but I'm not an anti-pumpkin beer guy. Like
this is fascinating to me.
If I go somewhere and they have one on tap, I'm going to try it.
I'm an anti-pumpkin beer guy, but we make
just anti
absolutely 100%.
Well, we make
so that's where I live.
Well, no, I don't hate it. It's just not my style. I had a 10 ounce the other day, but no, I mean, if we only brewed the beers that I like, we make like 2 beers. Yeah. So we make. I'm not into dark
right
beers
here
or malty.
There they are.
Yeah, and they're 3 actually.
3. Yes.
But
sure, you got to wrestle a tree.
We do it all because, I appreciate it because it's not my style or somebody else's style. It doesn't mean it's not a good beer.
Right.
So appreciation for the full range and know what you do and do it well and.
So what?
No, appreciation is great, but pumpkin belongs in two places: bisque and a scone.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
and see, normally
That's it.
Or
That's
latte.
it.
It belongs in my mouth is where it belongs.
Or a pie.
and I don't drink pumpkin spice lattes. I don't do any of that. I don't eat pumpkin pie. I don't, I'm not a pumpkin guy, but I will enjoy occasionally a
you're a
pumpkin
beer
beer.
guy. But you're a beer
I'm a beer guy. I'm a beer guy. All right, listen, this is very exciting, but we must move on to the 4 questions. The final 4. Brent Raska is here. He's the owner and head brewer at Burning Bush. Scott McElhenney, and I've been pronouncing your name correctly the entire time.
You hit it. It's
he is the
amazing.
brewer. All right, gentlemen. Now, I know I've heard from you both that, we've watched some of the episodes. We know the 3 questions. Well, gentlemen, we have added a 4th question just because many brewers like you have done their research, just like I do my research, and you know what we're going to ask you. So we'll start with the easy ones. Catherine, would you like to ask the first of the final 4 to our guests?
Yeah, I'll take number 1. So the first one is the hill that you will die on. You will not make this beer. You're not trend chasing it. You don't like it. You don't want to serve it. You want nothing to do with it. What is the beer that you're not making?
I almost think Brent's going to say anything but these 3.
No, I like, but I do have one. It's a weird style, but good friend of mine used to brew here. Anyway, hey, let's try this beer. It was a brown IPA. And
I've never heard of that.
Which, I don't think it's really a thing, but
I don't think it's
for good reason. It was I've tried chewing tobacco probably 4 times in my life, and I've thrown up twice of those things, when I was in high school, college. But
were you in the tree when you did it?
I know I should have been. I mean, that would have been. Anyway, but smelling this beer brought me back to chewing. I wanted to throw up. Just the smell of it brought me back to chewing tobacco. And maybe it was the hops that I don't know what it was, but a brown IPA, because I'm not into malty beers. I'm not a fan of brown ales, but we could make one.
Sure.
We haven't yet, but I'd be okay with that being
okay.
It's people enjoy brown ales, but a brown IPA, no.
Listen, I'm all about innovation, and I love people trying new things. And so when I heard about India Pale Lagers, cold IPAs, whatever you want to call it nowadays, I was like, okay, maybe this is a cool thing. That's a beer that I don't really have any interest in brewing. It's I get why somebody had a thought outside the box, and I'm always trying to figure out what the next one's going to be. But that's just one that I don't have a whole lot of interest in.
Okay.
I like both of these answer because one of them is this is absolutely the dumbest combination. The other one was this is just somebody put hops in a lager.
Yeah.
I you know what? Kudos on that one. Brian, back to you.
Oh, was that it? It's just putting hops in a lager? What mess with a lager?
Or they made an IPA and then added a lager yeast to it. It's
just stop yourself.
Pick a lane.
It went so bad that they had to change the name. They changed it to cold IPA because everyone who ordered it is India Pale Ale, but it's a lager, didn't taste the ale part. Oh, it's a lager, but taste it's it was just a poor naming decision. It's a lot of stuff went wrong.
Just check
there.
yourself before you, in fact, do wreck yourself. All right. We'll start with Scott on this one and then move on to Brent. A beer that you brewed, it might have been, people might have really liked it, or maybe they didn't like it. It doesn't matter. But for whatever reason, you just won't brew it again.
We may have the same
I know
answer
where
on
he's
this
going.
one.
Yeah.
I've been hemming and hawing because, like I said, like you said, we did our research and I knew this question was coming. And the beer that I would never brew again, I want to, but it needs to be better.
It might happen, but yeah.
We did a maple bacon imperial red ale, and it's a lot of legwork to do it. We made a bacon tincture ourselves.
Oh my God.
I cooked 15 pounds of bacon in my house. Almost burned my house down
Yeah.
because I fell asleep and it was in the oven. I woke up and smoking. But anyway.
Yeah, so it was just a challenge left, right, and center. And honestly, it's delicious and it came out really well. You could pour it over your pancakes and it would be amazing. But I guess that's not what everyone's looking for. And the return on it, not talking monetarily, it's just it's slow to come out, and nobody was really getting a bunch of them. And it was a delicious beer, and it's a fun, unique thing to have. And we like to always have something unique, but it was just a challenge.
Okay.
It's a lot of work.
Is that your answer too?
Well, Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we make it again someday because then it's like, how? But I know how I can make it
Because
better.
everybody loves bacon.
Well, right. It's like, or do it different. Actually, the first time we did it, there's this maple bacon syrup that like we just bought it, we added it. So it was a lot less work.
Okay.
Because then not only did I cook the bacon, then we had to strain all the fat out of it. And it took forever. Like it took so many hours. Like we used coffee filters and it was just like insane. But if we buy somebody else's and just add it in, no.
All right. I will ask this next one because the fourth question, the new question is Catherine's brainchild. So I will ask you this. Your go-to off-the-clock beer. It can be one of yours. It could be something else.
Can I cheat?
You can cheat if you must.
People always ask me what my favorite beer is here, and they're all my babies, so I love them all. But
it's very parental of you.
Yeah,
very nice.
I love the Lion's Den. I don't want to be that guy that drinks his own beer. I love the Lion's Den. If I'm going to stray outside of that, Old Smash beer that I don't think they make anymore, and I haven't found. Founders made Mosaic Promise. That was really good. Mosaic's one of my favorites. It's such an easy hop to do right. Or Coors Light.
Coors Light. There you go. It's the right beer now.
Yeah.
For our beer, we beat Red Sea,
Okay.
Lion's Den. We have a beer called Smooth Serpent, which is our kind of classic IPA, just a regular IPA.
Yeah.
But yeah, like non here, you got Maplewood Center Juice is always,
Okay.
It's classic hazy. So.
All right. Perfect. All right, Catherine. Number 4.
Number 4 coming at you. All right. So the beers that you have, what is your favorite beer that you've got to pair with food, and what are you pairing it with? I live for my next meal. Everybody knows, like, I am one meal away from the best meal I've ever had, but I love talking about what alcohol we pair with it.
Just a little background. So we have one of our bartenders. She makes cookies, and now she's starting her own bakery. She actually sells cookies and stuff at other breweries, and her name's Maddie and Berry Sweets. And so we did a sweet and beer tasting last February, and Scott and Maddie were kind of facilitating, and we had Red Sea with one of her like chocolate caramel brownie or something. I can't remember what, but anyway, we did like a dessert and beer pairing, which was fun. The peanut butter porter, we had the Red Sea, we had a couple other ones. But
I think that one went with the chocolate caramels, not caramel. Yeah, chocolate caramel brownie. Mine would be I'm going to cheat as well. Pizza. We're in Chicago, right? Pizza's the big thing.
I think, yes.
It's not a small thing. We make the basil beer that we were talking about earlier.
Ooh, yeah.
Just that and pizza. It's just such an easy combination.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And we
sell
I'm gonna
pizza
get the loose
too.
frozen, and somebody's going to send me a basil beer. Got it.
And we sell pizzas here, and we had the basil plant. So some customers would pick the basil off the plant and just throw it on the pizza. So that's a good one. You know what? My favorite is like I'm home on a weekend and having brunch. I'll have a Red Sea, the raspberry kettle sour, and just bacon, just with brunch. Like instead of a mimosa, I'll have Red Sea and bacon. That's like my favorite combo ever. I don't know why.
That sounds fantastic.
Perfect.
Sounds wonderful.
Before we wrap up, I do have one plug.
We got it real quick. Yeah, tell us about what's going on behind us.
Yes. So I do want to plug our event space, River Room at Burning Bush Brewery that opened up last April.
It's gorgeous.
2023. I see people walking back there now. We have an event tonight, but it's a beautiful
Cody
deck.
can't wait to get to that event.
Deck right on the river. Like 150, 200 people, weddings, fundraisers,
bar
mitzvahs, everything under the sun, and that's been a huge benefit to both spaces. And the brewery's the liquor provider for back there, and so that's been a huge, I kind of pitched myself, we're open during COVID, but opening a second business a couple years later, and that's up in full swing now. And so, anyway, I just wanted to plug that.
even just walking out back to sit on your patio, which is right along the north branch of the Chicago River, is a nice place to have a beer.
Yeah, the patio is a huge draw, and people come, and with the event space too. When there's not an event, people can sit out back closer to the river as well. And so having that seating and being in this location is everything.
It's great, yeah.
The community around here was hungry for something. So scored on the location, and a lot of families, and we're dog friendly and kid friendly, and a lot of people that bike or walk here. So it's been a great.
Do you offer your services as a wedding officiant?
It's funny. I could, or my wife, she's the better one, but it's funny. I haven't yet, but I'm sure I will someday. I've done a lot of weddings for my buddies because they're like, well, who's gonna? Because a lot of them aren't Christians, and so I've done like that, but I'm sure I'll do one someday. Yeah.
Here's probably the biggest shock that you will hear tonight. I officiated Cody's wedding.
All right. Well, this doesn't surprise me too much. I can see it.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm ordained too.
All right. There you go.
Are you really?
Apparently,
Hold
I
on.
need
I mean,
to step
it's the-
my game up over here. I don't know who I'm talking
Hold
with
on.
all of a sudden.
That's right. We're just listen. I'm going to throw some.
No, I didn't. I forgot that, Bri, you were ordained as well. I mean,
I am
I'm through the universallifechurch.com.
I've
so
officiated
is it
4
real?
or 5
But I
weddings.
officiated
Cody's
my
officiated
Yeah, I
a couple
officiated.
weddings too.
I'm starting to feel like a real slouch over here, guys.
Yeah, really. Come on, Scott. You can't. You can't brew and not be ordained.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what? You married peanut butter and porter in
Yeah,
the
he's married a lot of
perfect, in the perfect marriage.
You have married Basil and
You did.
Amber and
You
Amber.
married-
You have married
yeah.
hops and malts.
Yeah.
And one last plug because here we
Yes,
are.
plug it. Let's do it. Plug it
October
up.
20th, we have our Fall Fest. Instead of an Oktoberfest, we started a Fall Fest last year. So we have a bounce house, bands. Like it's on a Sunday because it's with the event space, and the event space is booked up every Saturday. So we had it a Saturday last year, but out on a Sunday this year, so we could do it in both spaces. But October
nice.
20th. We have
And it's free.
Kuma's Corner and Big Star and 3 bands and big Fall Fest October 20th.
Free
So,
to
wanna plug.
attend, I
Free-
should say. The
Yeah.
beer
we don't
still
get-
costs money.
We still got to pay
Yeah.
for food and beer.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. We will do it. We will do it to keep Burning Bush going. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer. Be sure to support your local brewery because without your support, it's rough going for some of your favorite breweries. Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer is produced by award-winning podcast producer Cody Goff. You can read our blog, grab some merch, check out episodes, and get in touch with us via our website, craftybrewerspod.com. Do you have a brewery that you'd like us to talk to? Are you a brewer like Brent and Scott? And you think, well, these guys, they look pleasant enough. We'll go on their podcast. You can get a hold of us via email at craftybrewerspod@gmail.com.
It's a great time.
Catherine, we have merch. We like to sell merch. We try to sell merch to keep things going. What are we featuring today?
So I was drinking today a beer that inspired the merch pick. So I today have had Suds, which is just a classic drinking beer from our friends at Palm City Brewing down here in Fort Myers. It is beer flavored beer. So our merch today is I just want beer flavored beer. That's our merch for today.
Sweatshirts, t-shirts, long sleeve t-shirts with the I just want beer flavored beer. You can get that.
Yep.
But if you go to craftybrewerspod.com, you'll find something that you love, whether it's a hat, whether it's a shirt, whether it's a sweatshirt. Maybe you want a sticker. I don't know what you want. Listen, I'm not the boss of you. You buy what you want. Don't buy. Just browse. I don't care. Anyway, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Catherine, what do we need people to do? Please, we beg you.
We would love 5 stars because we are in fact 5-star people. And if you can't give us 5 stars for anything other than Brian's background right now and how he looks like the heat miser from various old animations in the 1970s, I mean, that alone gives us 5 stars.
You're without a Santa Claus, baby.
Yeah.
right?
I am Mr. Heat Miser.
He's Mr. Heat Miser.
Follow
Anyway.
us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us. What's our handle there?
Yeah. So we're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Facebook, Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer. Instagram, Crafty_Brewers_pod. Do those things. The other thing to keep in mind is this. When you are watching an episode, share it with your friends. Share it to your stories. If your buddies want to know what your dog did during the day, your buddies also want to know what you listened to. I promise. Because we're all obsessed with everybody else's lives. So share.
All right. Thanks again to Brent Raska and Scott McElhenney from Burning Bush Brewery for joining us. Once again, burningbushbrewery.com. And if you're in Chicago, in the North Central neighborhood, what's the address? Because I can't find my right paper.
4014 North Rockwell Street.
4014 North Rockwell in Chicago. Burningbushbrewery.com is the website. For Crafty Brewers, she's Catherine Vallow.
He's Brian Noonan.
Any last words?
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
You are
Thank you so
very
much.
welcome. Our pleasure.
Great to be
Thank you
here.
for being here.
Thank you.
Catherine.
When preparing for a hurricane, make sure you stock your fridge.
There you go.
With a lot of beer.
Yeah.
See ya.